No mai, haere mai ki Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. Great weekend of footy on the weekend. Just watching MP get up against the Crusaders was fun in itself. So many things to talk about there, including how they've turned a bit of a corner in some ways and being able to hold on when an opposition comes back at them so hard. So we'll look deeply into that. Also, a bit of a question mark with what they said on the breakdown last night, considering that Richie Mo'unga is looking to go to another World Cup. If he was to come to New Zealand, would Moana Pasifika be an option for him? We'll have a chat a little bit about that as well. We've got another special guest on the show. We've got Ben Tameifuna coming onto the show as well. You remember him obviously from titles at the Chiefs, Tonga captain, and he's been playing in France for 10 years. We'll get a good look into what he's doing at Bordeaux and how things have changed over there. We've also got Will Jordan mic'd up from that MP Crusaders game. We'll give you a bit of insight into him and how he works on the field, especially in a losing effort like that. It's really interesting to see what he has to say. Plenty more rugby, plenty of Aupiki, lots to talk about, lots to get excited about. It's another great Super Rugby year. James Parsons, goodness me. Moana Pasifika, like tipping that, wow.
Oh, they are the gift that keeps on giving. I just think the whole life of the competition is just absolutely thriving at the moment, which is extremely exciting, and it's exciting for them. Like that's a massive scalp. I mean, we've spoken at years for how hard it is actually to go down to Christchurch, and we've obviously pumped them up recently of, you know, being back. So that is a massive result, and I think one that really sends a message from MP to the comp.
Absolutely. Brynner, tough watching for you, but wow, it was impressive from Moana Pasifika.
Look, it was. I think none of us expected it. I think most New Zealand didn't expect it. But if you go a little bit deeper, you look at that performance of the last 40 minutes against the Chiefs, they were, you know, they had the potential to do it. And look, what I was really impressed with them was they just went through the front door. No doubt we'll go in a little bit deeper around it, but physically, the efficiency around the breakdown area. If there's one thing the Crusaders will be bitterly disappointed about, it'd be going straight through their heart. Their heart defense was pretty poor on the weekend, and Moana Pasifika did that consistently for the duration of the match. And I look forward to going a little bit deeper. You got to give credit where credit's due. And look, I was really impressed watching Moana Pasifika, and I think it could be a turning point in that franchise with that kind of performance, getting a win down in Christchurch, and hopefully now this can spearhead them now to get on a bit of a run and continue for maybe that top 6 at the back end of the year.
As soon as you teed it up, Brynner, let's go to the Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres turning point, where this week we will look at Moana Pasifika and the fact that when the Crusaders came back at them, they held firm, they struck back and they won the game, because in the past that might not have happened. What led to them being able to hold on?
Well, I think they obviously didn't play a lot of rugby in their half. They exit really efficiently via the boot. But I suppose the most important thing is, even when they made those breaches in behind, it was the accuracy of the offload or the placement and that speed of ball to make sure that they got those points from that tempo. They only had 9 turnovers conceded. That is seriously low for when you actually watch the game. And yes, they went, you know, straight through the middle, but there was still a number of offloads, a number of pops that kept that momentum going. And I think that speed of ball, but not rushing to score right as you make that line break was probably my thing that I just took, was just so efficient and so disciplined throughout that whole 80 minutes.
Their efficiency inside the 22, probably a lot of times through this year, that last pass or that last breakdown or the last ball presentation or something, when you're in that 22, for a lot of their tries, they were multiple phases, like 10, 14, 15 phases, and been able to, I guess, hold on to the ball and build pressure. And what that did, it suffocated the Crusaders into some ill discipline defensively. You know, they had a lot of penalties, and also I think the breakdown area, I think, what are the stats that I had here? They had 11 breakdown turnovers, whether that was through the heart defense, being able to get steals through Ardie Severe or their jacklers in the forward pack, or even on the edge. You know, I think the likes of Danny Tawala, the outside backs were able to get steals out on the edge. So both sides of the ball, breakdown-wise, they were just a lot better in the Crusaders. And Pellegrini, look, he's been the best buy, I think, of Super Rugby this year. We've talked around him in the turning point earlier when he came on off the bench for Jackson Garden Bishop, but the way that he's playing, you're talking around exit Jip, his game management when it comes to that kicking long, even his contest balls and understanding of when to play without the ball has been really good. And William Harville, I think, as well, along with Miracle Whailangi, those two boys have been really influential for Moana Pasifika this year with all the little things that they've done well through the duration of the season. So, yes, a really, really good performance. And, you know, hopefully, like I said, this can spearhead them now to the back end of the season making a top 6 run.
And I think Pellegrini's form has allowed the best Willie Havili to step into that role. It's not all on him, and he's not having that defensive pressure that, you know, he was the key guy to exit. He was the key guy to create when he was in that 10 jersey. He has been, you know, fantastic in terms of that exit as well. It's not all on Pellegrini to kick, which then means that's creating the defensive decisions, which is allowing their accuracy to get out of their own half raise and bringing the best out of both players.
Bruno, I like what you say about him being a best value buy. Like when you think about players who've been bought from one franchise to a next or come from overseas into Super Rugby, like as a value for money player, I mean, I'm thinking, you know, Aaron Smith was at the Blues, got picked up by the Highlanders. That was value for money.
Yeah.
You know, Aaron Cruden went from the Hurricanes to the Chiefs. They won 2 titles. That was serious value for money. Anyone come to mind for you?
Yeah, look, I think there's probably ones earlier in their career, but probably Scott Barrett stands out as a massive one. Coming from Canterbury, everyone probably expected him to go into that Crusaders setup. And I suppose at that stage, there are parameters around what you can pay for players at that young stage. So in terms of value for money and what they got by getting him over this length of time, it's probably been a very, very good buy.
You get a rookie contract on a player who you know is going to be an All Black and stealing him from Canterbury.
Yeah, but I like the ones you mentioned as well, because if you look at it, in terms of what impact, you know Cruds was a massive impact on those 2 titles. So when you package that up, Aaron Smith was massive and the Highlanders getting their title. So that to me pumps up the value of I suppose that performance. And, you know, Geordie's obviously won a title as well. So it's about the value they've paid, but then, you know, has it led to winning? And if you use Pellegrini, yes, it has.
Yeah.
He has started, you know, and there does have to be a lot of appreciation go to the coaches and, you know, the arty factor in terms of growing the forward pack to give them the platform. Totally get it. But, man, I don't think he wasn't starting at the start of the season, and he has just made every post a winner.
Yeah, Jackson Garden-Bashev's just had to watch and go, wow, you're doing well, mate.
And he wasn't playing poorly, Jackson, you know, like it was an opportunity off the bench that, you know, sort of made everyone sit up and go, man, this kid is pretty impressive against the Highlanders. And then he's just kept that form and that belief going. And from everything I hear, he's got a lot of self-belief in his skill set. And you can see that in the way he confidently just steps up in a big moment or just getting out of their half and takes it on his shoulders.
He's come from a slightly different system, right? Like he didn't just make it. He wasn't a superstar as a kid, went over to England, earned his stripes sprint. Sometimes that can do wonders for a person.
Yeah, it is. But look, boys, where's my acknowledgement?
Bryn Hall was a big pickup.
If there's just a time to pump me up here, it's my acknowledgement, isn't it?
That is fair enough, Bruno. A low end buy, 6 titles. There you go.
Low end?
Low end.
Oh, there were millions of dollars going to Bryn Hall.
I know he definitely had a lot more higher offers, but he wanted to go and get those titles and become an All Black, and he did most of it.
Yeah, well, looking at the Crusaders, there's obviously Bryn Hall, but I'm thinking Ron Cribb as well. When Ron Cribb went down to Christchurch, made a huge impact.
Yeah, massive.
Came up to Auckland and it wasn't the same. And your mate Sevu Reece, like he came down in obviously slightly different circumstances, but that was a huge pickup and was very successful for them.
In all seriousness, thanks, lads. I really appreciate that, Jeff. I just thought if there was a time for me just to maybe get something, it could have been that best buy there. But no, look, I do agree. Look, Ron Cribb, he was awesome. I think growing up, probably Jip and I, growing up, we understand who he was and where he come from. He was a great buy for the Crusaders. I think of Mose Tuiali'i as well as another great buy for the Crusaders going down there. Jip might not like this one. It was only for a year, but Ali Williams did go down to the Crusaders. And won a title down there, but he's a through and through blues man. But that's one that I think off the top of my head. But there's a 3 or 4 more that I do have that I think were really good for best buys. I think of Malakai Fekitoa, go from the Blues down to the Highlanders, Waisaki Naholo. Now both of those boys Dripper and I played with in 2013 and got opportunities to go down south and become All Blacks and were really good buys for the Highlanders. And then 2 other guys that I went for, Sonny Bill Williams. I think his involvements going to the Chiefs and winning those 2 titles was massive when he got his movements down there. And I think Jonah Lomu, how can you go past Jonah Lomu from the Blues going to the Hurricanes, even though he didn't win a title. But I guess what he brought to the capital and the likes of Moana there, who else is there? Tana Umanga, Christian Cullen. So I guess him being able to be down in Wellington with some really good buys. But yeah, I guess to finish this, Pellegrini, he's been a great buy for them, and hopefully how he continue the success and build this combination. I think with Tuala, who I thought was great, and William Havili, who we've touched on, who's having a great season for the Moana Pasifika team.
Another one of those is Ardie Savea. Obviously, they would have paid top dollar for him because he is a former World Player of the Year, but huge value there. And looking at the breakdown on the weekend, and we saw the piece where Richie Mo'unga got interviewed saying, look, I do want to go to a World Cup again. It got me thinking about Moana Pasifika and whether they could be in line to pick up another superstar in Richie Mo'unga come 2027. So his Japanese contract finishes in 2026. At that point, he will be available because of the stand-down period to represent New Zealand, Samoa or Tonga. We did have an email come through from Damien Jones. Damien, thank you for your email at aotearoa@sky.co.nz. He wouldn't be available for Japan. He hasn't done the 5 years of residency or registration within that country, but there are 3 countries that could be up for grabs for him. But when I think about this, Brenner, I'm thinking if you're Richie Mo'unga and you've lost a World Cup final, if you're going to the next World Cup, you want to win it. So surely that's where we start this conversation, that more than likely, that's the right way to go, is it? Going to the All Blacks as opposed to Tonga or Samoa?
Look, I think so. He said in his interview that he misses the world stage, and I think being an All Black, that's probably the best thing in terms of a World Cup year of what he's looking for. And for him to come back during that, he's gonna have to choose a Super Rugby team. And look, I can't see him going anywhere. Hurricanes, Blues, Chiefs. And I think it's either going to be the Crusaders. And I genuinely think, Moana Pasifika. I think if you look at Ardie Savea, and not only Ardie, but, hearing talks of other guys that might possibly want to go follow suit and being able to play for Moana Pasifika. Look, I think Richie could do that. I think he's got a great heritage of obviously his mum and his dad, obviously being Samoan and Tongan, and knowing him as well, the heritage that he holds closely when it comes to the Pasifika upbringing. It's a big thing for him. So, the easy answer is the Crusaders because he's born and bred there. He's done so much for that club and he loves that club. He's talked about that openly of how much he loves that club. But, if he is only going to come back for a year, would he want to go to the Crusaders and think, in 2 years' time, Taha Kimara, or I'd have to think he would be, the long future. So the long-term answer, if he wants to stay around for another World Cup Taha, and that being another 6 to 7, does he want to stop that progression and growth for that club just for him to come back for 1 year and play for them? Now, I guess the Crusaders would love to have him there, and of a world-class player, why not? But I think Richie, at the same time, understanding of what he's done there, and I guess the love that he has, will probably, might think about, not going there and going to Moana Pasifika, and he could probably benefit the young guys coming through that system and helping him to what it looks like to maybe win a championship or get close to a championship when he does come there. Because if you do look at that interview, he did talk around him being at Toshiba. It has been a different journey for him in terms of leadership, being able to help younger guys, getting fulfillment of what it looks like to prepare at a world-class level on the field, off the field, culture, club-wise. And you'd have to think if Ardie's there for another couple of years, and if they do get some other acquisitions through that, I think it could be great timing for him to be able to come to Moana Pasifika for that 1 year before heading back off to Japan and, I guess, sailing off into the sunset.
When I think about that argument, Chipper, and so if he said in the interview that he wants to give back, right, but he also wants to, let's say he wants to win a World Cup, being the All Blacks and Moana Pasifika at the same time allows him to do both of those things. If he went to Samoa or Tonga, he wouldn't be able to do both of those things. So that's where my logic comes from. Does that sound?
Yeah, look, I think he's a winner. Like, let's be honest, he's a competitor, and I think wherever he goes, he's going to have a massive impact, whether it's the Crusaders. If it is to be Moana Pasifika, that you've seen what Ardie's impact has in terms of that forward pack and being able to now stand on their own 2 feet. It's adding him to the mix, is exactly what you're saying, because Moana Pasifika is wanting to grow the islands, and having those players to be able to filter that knowledge around and then get the system running where you're picking up more miracle Failangis and coming to learn from players like that, then there's going to be a genuine... He's going to achieve what he wants to achieve whilst also wanting to win. And the All Blacks would give him, I suppose, the perception of a perceived ability to do that, not to have a knock on Samoa and Tonga, but I see what you're saying in terms of him being able to achieve everything he probably wants, and do something different. He's got a strong legacy at the Crusaders, but if he went and did something special and won with Moana Pasifika, his legacy would live well beyond the time he spends on this planet. It would be something else. And
Bruna, like Jip is saying, maybe putting a bow on his previous legacy. Do you want to go back and redo what you've done before? Maybe not.
Yeah, and that's obviously a question that we'd have to ask Rich. But, I think what he's done at the Crusaders, adding another title, great. He's able to play for a club that he has grown up loving. But I think just knowing Rich and the way that he thinks around that, he wants to be transcending or, kind of a bit of a maverick in terms of how can he influence. And I think him being over in Japan right now and the growth in his leadership, and I guess the more of a taking a seat back and helping guys grow and being able to push them into a direction for success, whether it's through culture and probably winning, I think he would get a lot more satisfaction if he was able to go to Moana Pasifika, lead them to a title or lead them into a position where they could make finals and being able to influence that way. And then, the guys of Pellegrini, like the likes of Pellegrini or even that back line for when he does come back, and if there are people that are ready in terms of their age and they're a little bit younger, and you learn off of Richie Mo'unga for a year and being able to know what it looks like preparation-wise, big moments-wise, conversations off the field, I think it'd be just so beneficial. So for me personally, I think him going to Moana Pasifika would add to his legacy even more at Super Rugby, which I guess we already talked about him being one of the best Super Rugby players ever. I think it'd be a nice little carrot, I think, for him for himself internally, if he could help them get the job done for himself and the team.
I think as well, like you mentioned the term maverick. Sometimes to be a maverick, it's quite hard because there's so much unknown, but you have to think he would have much more confidence seeing the impact in a short space of time that Artie's had, is I suppose being that initial step that goes, actually, I'm going to go on this journey as well and achieve what I want to achieve. But there would be an element where the success that Moana Pasifika's had this year will make the fear of unknown probably not be as daunting to take that first step on this path.
We've had a few emails through. One was from Andrew Brody, so please send us an email at aotearoa@sky.co.nz or put a comment in the YouTube comments section and we'll try our best to get to your questions. Maybe not this week, maybe next week, maybe the week after. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. But he had a question regarding Scott Barrett. And essentially said he and many of his friends are of the opinion that he hasn't been the same since he became the AB's captain, that he has dropped considerably, his body language has changed. What do you make of that, Jip?
Well, I don't see it personally. Obviously, we went through the same thing with Sam Cane. When you're the All Black captain, a lot of pressure, a lot of eyes, a lot of expectation goes on. But as we say, I don't think any result is ever about an individual. And, there's been things within the Crusaders environment that have massively improved, but it just shows, you've got to do it every day, every week to be able to allow the team success to happen. And I think for Scott, if you look at his stats, and I'm not going to rattle through them all, but when you look at his stats, his numbers are still reflective of what we saw prior to being a captain. In some instances, they're higher, as we see that leadership sometimes bolsters people. So I don't see that, but as we know, as fans, when you're watching it and you look for answers, I'm not aligned with that being the answer personally. I don't think he's dipped. If anything, his discipline's improved. As most of his numbers have improved, not so much at Super Rugby, they've remained the same, but at Test match level, have definitely improved. So it's a balancing act, but. It's the nature of, you look at where Sam Cane finished and that same pressure was on him initially. I think it's just a storm Scott will absorb, and he'll just know the only thing he can control is his actual performance.
Bruna, you've played a lot with Scott Barrett. As the kind of guy who seems to me quite intense about his rugby, quite disciplined off the field. He is all about it. How do you think he would be coping right now with I suppose the inconsistencies that are happening within the team?
He's a rugby nerd. So, look, he loves, obviously, the finer details of what rugby is. And, to be honest, I actually think him not being captain of the Crusaders will take a lot of pressure off him. He'll still be in and around that leadership group. He'll have a massive play in terms of how the weeks are and what's required for that team. But I think even Sam Whitelock, when he was captain, he got taken off because obviously Scooter came in, and whether you're captain or not, you still have a massive involvement in the leadership qualities. And I agree with Jip. I think, there's nothing that I can see, to be honest, and through the stats that he's doing anything differently. I think it's just kind of microscope now that he's All Black captain, and probably seen in a light where everything's under the microscope.
It doesn't give context in terms of, did it nail the game plan? Did it actually set others up? Like, I haven't gone into that depth, but from a pure numbers perspective, factually, there's been a slight increase in the positive stats and a decrease, especially at Test rugby, in the discipline stats.
So there's something there for you, Andrew. Now, in that game, we also saw quite a bit of Will Jordan having a few things to say. Now, I suppose Will Jordan's always been admired for his attacking, but not necessarily all the rest of his game in the same way, because his attacking shines out so much. So we had a player mic on him for the weekend. It's a really interesting insight, not just into Will Jordan and how he operates within that team, but also the role of a fullback within a losing team and the kind of communication that goes on. Take a look at this.
Go, boys. Stay here.
2 metres away, Moana Pasifika. They hit the shot and a try in the corner, possibly.
Just for our straight, I reckon if we reach around the 40, we've got a good flow on. Let's just keep going, I reckon. Wait, I'm in first phase. Wait, first phase I'm in, then I'm out. Wait, I'm coming real late. Wait for me, wait for me. Macca, wait for me. I need to let cook on the clean, but on the edge. Yeah. Just all got to improve our fog work a little bit. Yeah. We're all getting caught offside, so what are you going to do? Roll, replay ball, get up. Inside boat, go. Okay, boat. 2. Great intent, great execute the breakdown. Keep going, moment by moment. Next job, clean exit. Mouth!
O'Connor goes to the heavens.
The access is good.
Crusaders take it through Jordan. Good take from him.
Off of space! Yes! Here we go! Again, just our intent next to the breakdown, eh? Keep hammering on it. Same thing again. Clean exit, we go down there, pressure them. Jock! On turnover. Straight, we just bang it.
Picked up, and now a chance for Moana Pasifika. A runaway possibly. Up inside the 22 they come. Supporters there. They chip it ahead. Close. No.
Off him. Wait, dancing in phase off 8, bro. Fire, fire, fire. Go short, Tully. Straight. Go, go. Hook.
Hot potato from the Crusaders. Jordan moves on to Fihak. Down the right wing, steps away. There's the offload, and Drummond scores. And a famous victory here at Christchurch. For the first time ever, Moana Pasifika have beaten the Crusaders 45 points to 29.
So, Bryn Hall, you have played before with Will Jordan a lot. When you saw that video, what was it that stood out to you?
A couple of things. Look, I think which we've kind of touched on with the game against Moana, the breakdown area. And, he was actually talking to Shea Fihaka, I believe, in that clip in terms of on the breakdown area, being able to win the breakdown, whether that was through, your footwork into contact to be able to try and win the contact, whether it's being able to get a quick movement on the ground, to be able to present it, so they obviously don't get their breakdown turnovers, but you could probably sense his frustration that they didn't get that right. But I think the biggest thing that Will brings, it was a lot of solution focus. So no doubt in those kind of conditions, or I guess when you don't have momentum, Will was really good around being solution focused. And you probably heard them in that video in terms of what he was seeing and how he could try and influence players to try and make that change. There's probably one thing, I don't know if it's going to be told in that, but obviously their defense wasn't up to par. So I think the good thing about Will, yes, can show a form of frustration because you care, but he's always solution focused, and I think that's really important as a leader in a team to be able to give your players a form of solution, even though you're under the pump, to try and make a change from that instead of just being emotional and I guess white noise and not being able to have a solution for it.
And the deeper they got into it, Chip, the more you heard Will talk in huddles and in all those things. So that shows that he's a strong leader within that side. When the shit's hitting the fan, for lack of a better term, he's willing to stand up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's when leaders step up, is when it's hard. That's actually what a leader's job is to get through the rough waters. And he certainly stepped into that space with confidence. And I think it also is a reflection of the conversation we've had over a number of years around Bodie and obviously the time I spent with the Blues and trying to talk about how much that helps the team, that voice in the backfield, whether it be attack and defence. They have, it's not a bird's eye view, but I suppose the best view to see where the weaknesses are in their own defence or where the weaknesses are in the opposition defence for them to strike. And it just shows how he's so successful and probably paving the way away from a dual pivot. You know, he's almost the example of maybe where the fullback position is going to.
Yeah. Speaking of good fullbacks, Ruben Lovbe over the weekend was in absolutely cracking form as the Hurricanes wiped the floor with the Waratahs. Brenna, he was incredible, wasn't he? Like the way that he did all the things, I suppose we know Ruben Lovbe for what he does with the ball in his hands, but it was what he's doing for the people around him.
That's exactly it. Ross, it's a great way to put it. I think his distribution skills under pressure are probably, I would arguably say, the best in the competition. Now, I know there are a lot of good fullbacks that are good with distribution. We've touched on Shaun Stevenson in the early part of the year with his distribution skills, but time and time again, he does that consistently. Now, look, even you look at the line-out strikes, you see the big back flick ball, which I guess is his own X factor, and he's able to do that, but throughout the duration of this year, off their first phase strike attack, even if that's off a line out or a scrum and he's the last pass to get that ball to space, he does it time and time again. So that's one thing that I've been really impressed with. You'll touch on in terms of the attacking ability or non-existent attack, but his square hands, I think for the 4 tries, there were 4 tries in that game. Through his distribution skills, he was the last pass or the last act to try and get that ball to the width. So really love his game and where he's at. And I think we're very lucky at the moment that, you know, we've got a lot of good fullbacks. We've got Will Jordan, Shaun Stevenson and Ruben Lovbe, I think was outstanding on the weekend. A lot of those Hurricane boys. Balin Sullivan, I think we talked about who's putting their hands up as a centre. We didn't really touch on it, but I thought he was outstanding on the weekend. All round physically, defensively, his attack has been great with his lines, very similar to what a Billy Proctor does in that Hurricanes environment. And I thought Brandon Yosse, he was outstanding in that second half with his attack and how he was able to dominate collisions. But Ruben Lovbe, he was probably very close to my MVP on the weekend with his distribution skills of a fullback at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it's the selfless nature of it, because when you watch the game and then you look at the stats, you're like, man, he's 16 touches for 0 carries, but it didn't feel like he didn't carry. Do you know what I mean? And then when you see that, you're like, his whole mindset and his decision making isn't about him standing out. And it's credit to the people around him, because you can only pass a ball to someone calling that they're in space and you've got confidence in that. But some of the passes, I know there's a flick pass, but there's a lot of deft touches ones that he gets away. And we know the Hurricanes, when they can get to that edge, they're pretty hard to stop with the weapons they have out there. But then they also have this game where they can go through the middle and go through the front door. But I think Ruben is a key conduit to bringing the two together with accuracy. So if it's not on to shovel, he's not going to put someone in a worse position. He'll take his medicine. When those options open up for him, he sees them because he's visually, I suppose, looking what's right in front of him and trusting the voices around him. But I think the biggest, and we talk about turning points and the impact he's probably having most within the squad, is probably not on attack, because I think the Canes have turned defensively, and a fullback and a halfback are so crucial in terms of organising those defensive structures. And when you look at it, when they're tackling at 91%, they're winning the breakdown, and they've made some good adjustments around that. They're only giving away 7 penalties, and there's only 39% of the carries of the Tars getting across the game line, which is quite low for the increase we've seen in Super Rugby. And obviously teams are getting better at defending, but 39% is relatively low. And I do look at it, when you look at the wide angle view, he is just talking the whole time. So it's another, I know we're going back to what we've just said about Will Jordan and talking about what we've said about Bodie, but this is now having a massive impact on the side in terms of this non-scene stuff. And I just think it's the selfless display that Ruben Lovbe put out there on the weekend and has in previous weekends that has most impressed me.
On a different note, on the weekend, the Brumbies went right through the middle of the Highlanders scrum. It was pretty impressive. The Highlanders got absolutely smoked at scrum time, and it pretty much was the turning of their game.
Yeah, and I mean, they would have known it was coming off the back of the Reds game. But I suppose the key thing is, you know, the high penalty count is one thing, and set piece is massive. I get that. I'm not deflecting, but both against the Reds and the Brumbies, their attacking stats, they actually created enough to win the game. Where the percentage that has slowly decreased over the last few weeks has been their conversion rate. So I know you don't want to leak that amount of points, 34 points, but they actually left so much out there. They could have won like a Moana Pasifika at 45-34, or had they just, you know, got one or two more opportunities. When they've won, they're around 75-80% of the conversion. They actually had a lot less opportunity. Now they've got some confidence and they're creating more opportunities. It's now getting that risk reward right in terms of what are you going to give back to them? Okay, we want to avoid set piece, obviously, so we want to keep that ball alive and keep going, but it's just that slight bit of patience to be able to finally break through. And I still think there's a lot to like about the Landers, and I suppose the Brumbies showed me how patient they are. And it was like two different styles on attack. It's like they would just keep going. And when they pulled trigger, they'd score on the edge because they'd tighten and they manipulate through 14 phases, 15 phases, 16 phases. So I think, again, not to flip it back to the Highlanders off the back of that Brumbies comment, but it's also when opposition comes into their 22, how can they get a turnover? How can they stop it not be 14, 15, 16 phases? How can we get a stop or force an error or put pressure on the opposition that means they turn over and their conversion rate's at 50%?
One positive that I did see out of the game, and Jip, I don't know if you saw this as well, but Nathan Hastie, he's been one guy that I've been tremendously impressed with how he's gone. Now, Folau Fakatava is a big part of what they've been the last couple of years, but his development, and especially, you know, you look at probably the 43rd minute and the 52nd minute for Gilbert and Ariki's tries, how he's attacking the breakdown and his ability to be able to get offloads and break the line, or even little deft touches to get through for players, has been one positive thing that I think the Highlanders continue to keep using, because like he's been really outstanding. I know we've touched on a lot of halfbacks through the duration of this competition, but look, he is playing some really good footy, has had a massive involvement for the Highlanders in the last couple of weeks with his involvements on the attacking side of the ball.
We have been focusing a lot on Super Rugby recently, but we do love international rugby and we want to put a little bit more emphasis on that as well in the next few weeks heading into the international season and just in general, really. So we thought we'd track down a couple of Kiwis who are overseas along the way, and the first of whom we're going to talk to is Ben Tameifuna. You might remember Ben, obviously, from 2 Super Rugby wins with the Chiefs, went over quite early on in his career to France, has since captained Tonga and done a great job of it. You know, well known as probably the biggest prop doing the rounds in international footy, but a hell of a skill set. He's at Bordeaux currently after starting with Racing. He won his first ever title in 2016 in his first year with Racing with Dan Carter and others. So we thought we'd catch up with Ben about, I suppose, life on the field, life off the field, what it's like for a New Zealander over in France, and what French rugby is like in general, maybe some insight into what the French are looking like heading here in July. So Ben, you started in Paris, now you're at Bordeaux. Does Bordeaux remind you a little bit more of Hawke's Bay?
As we said, Bordeaux is more like Hawke's Bay, right by the coast. Obviously, wine country. A bit of wine in Hawke's Bay, and the wine here. Grew up in Hawke's Bay, working in the vineyards there, and then seeing so much of it here sort of, gives me a bit of a taste of home, and it's pretty awesome.
What kind of job did you do in the vineyard?
We were pruning. Weeding, pruning, weeding, to like after pruning them, tie them back up onto the wires and picking up all the dead wine, dead grapes. Just hardly.
So what you're saying is when you were driving down the road through the Bordeaux countryside, you can feel their pain.
But they got their their hoodies on and trying to battle the sun and the elements. And I'm like, oh, man, I remember back in my day. But yeah, no, it's sort of like back in Hawke's Bay, you know, when it's hot, and when it's cold, it's really cold.
What do you get up to outside of footy?
We have a beach out here called Akashong, pretty famous for its oysters and stuff. Usually on our day off, we'll probably shoot out there and have lunch with some of the island boys on the beach. Just gives us a bit of, you know, sort of feel like being back home for a little bit. Other than that, we usually just chill. We play a bit of Call of Duty with the boys for a laugh and banter, but yeah, really chill.
You've obviously spent a lot of time in both Super Rugby with the Chiefs, top 14 for a number of years. What do you see as the key difference?
You know, we're more focused around mauling for penalties, scrumming for penalties, just real up the guts, you know, one-off runners, you know, and to be honest, it sort of fell into my hands because, you know, I'm trying to play a bit more physical and, you know, if you're hearing big boppers running straight at you, that's, you know, that was perfect for me, eh? And yeah, the game obviously wasn't as fast, so it lasted a bit longer than I did when I was at the East. So.
Well, you're obviously there to do a lot of scrummaging. We know French rugby is good for that. What are the key differences or the insights you can give us?
Our first game was against Stade Francais when I was at Racing. Big derby. I was up against, I don't know, some old school French, and he was straight like hit, and he just hips out straight up. And then I got pinged for it. I was like, what's going on here? And then we got the rude awakening and said, hey, this is French rugby, man. You know, the ref sees you going forward. It doesn't really matter what angle you're really pushing at. And yeah, and I had to adapt to that quick because if not, I would have been on toast for most of their season. But lucky I had a bit of weight behind me, you know, so I had to just lock it down. So
certainly looks very hard to win away from home. Is that a lot to do with the support that comes out within these towns?
Our stadium here in Bordeaux holds 32,000, and every week, maybe tickets go out on a Monday, it's full by Wednesday morning or something. Obviously, it's such a long season. You can't send your best team, you know, week in, week out. You sort of have to try and pick and fight which ones you send your teams on, because, like I say, obviously we'll talk about later, but the two competitions we play in, the Champions Cup and top 40, and it just, you know, it's here to the end of the season, everyone's all broken or just, you know, mentally fatigued or body's broken. And
is it more like an American baseball team? It's just a constant rotation and shuffle?
You know, if you feel sitting a bit comfortably in the, you know, top four, you know, you tend to, you know, maybe sacrifice one or two games where you sort of let the young boys go out on an away game, and then you make up for the points on the home game. You have to win at home, you know. The last thing you want to do is lose at home and you get drilled in the change room. So,
you played in front of 99,000 people at Camp Nou in 2016 in the top 14 final. It's quite different from 20-odd thousand in Hamilton.
And the only time I've seen that stadium was playing FIFA when I was younger. It was just mind-blowing for myself, especially little snotty nose from Hawke's Bay. You know, you sit on a cloud in front of so many people. We probably didn't know rugby, but pretty stoked to be doing it with fellow Kiwis as well, Dan and Joe. So that was pretty awesome as well. And yeah, they were much of the night after, but...
Yeah, were Joe Rokasoko and Dan Carter a massive help to a young lad like you in Paris when you joined Racing?
Yeah, big shout out to those guys as well, especially Joe, Chris Masoya and Dan. Well, obviously Dan was in France before with Pépignon, so he sort of knew how the French thought and think and how they were. Yeah, Chris and Joe pretty much, just like took men of their wing and said, hey, do this, do that. This is how they react to this. This is how they do it here.
Was there a particular lesson that you learned above all else?
You know, you just run hard, play hard. Don't try and fix what they're trying to do. You know, just say yes sir, no sir. Just bring your element of how you play to how they're coaching. And I think they try to switch me into being the French style front rower prop. You know, your job is just scrumming and line out lefty and mauling. You know, I guess you always see what you get.
Well, I know firsthand you're a pretty skillful guy. You can kick, you can pass. You've also run over the top of Luke Braid and I a number of times, but is one I certainly do remember. Is there still aspects within the top 14 that allows you to bring that X factor out?
With the style we played here in Bordeaux, we try and get the ball in the hands of myself, and we have another number 8, Terita the Tafu, Pete Samuel, you know, try to get the ball into our hands a bit more, because we had the ability to catch, pass, run over players if we have to, throw the ball at the back door. Yes, Tom has to get contracts, so it's
How is the try tally?
Let's go lower now than what it was at the Chiefs, that's for sure. It's going to help other boys over the line now. It's all the flashy backs, especially if you got wingers like Damien Peno and Louis Burberry who just, you know, run for days. So they're scoring more of the points than the forwards.
Pinot particularly, that guy is as good as anyone in the world. Have you seen some incredible magic out of him?
Oh, this guy, man, he's such a character. You know, does bugger all, to be honest. He's just so talented. He walks around the gym in his bloody Crocs, down trying someone in the corner there, and then he's throwing a tin on one's head there, and then either he's singing from the other side of the physio room, or he's so laid back. But you know, there's some characters that you just, you know, you don't want to touch. You know, you just let them do their thing, and they turn up on Saturday. You know, it's pretty much all that matters. But him, and I remember when Louis first came in, like 3 years ago, the 17, 18-year-old, I think, probably the size of my thigh. And he was just running circles around Ben Lam at the time. And you know, it's because Ben Lam was on our wing. We played together a couple of years ago. And yeah, there was a few times Ben was a bit frustrated and had to grab him by the collar and said, hey, I'm getting old, eh, then? Sorry. Hey, get me injured now, but no, he definitely reminds me of home, just the talent that's coming through.
If you look at that talent coming through, 3 big tests against the All Blacks, away from home in New Zealand, off the back of what they saw Ireland do, and obviously there is the element of the finalists in the top 14 not being there for that tour. There's enough talent for them to be excited and enthused that they can come do a job down here.
They still have the depth to come through and deliver a good game against the All Blacks. And whether the final is an excuse or not, that's up to them, you know. But yeah, it's like I said before, it's such a long season here. Having to finish a final and then having to get on a plane, you know, to go play an international test, you know, it's a bit demanding, especially for myself as well, because I think I have to do the same as well if we get to that stage. I've got the PNC preparations coming up, and it's the World Cup qualifier year now, so I'm going to have to strip off for a long season as well.
So how do you handle that negotiation?
The Tonga Tribunal, I think they get hold of the clubs when they find the schedule is set for PNC or July window, and they obviously notify the clubs. And I've told the clubs that, you know, I'm leading the team at the moment, and it's a bit hard, you know, if I obviously take a week or a couple of weeks off to not turn up, it'll be, you know, a bit of a blow for the team. And but yeah, I think the clubs are really open-minded about that, and, you know, have the best of the players to recover well as well. So
just looking behind you, you seem to cherish those jerseys you get.
Fijian, the World Cup jerseys on there.
And is there a player that you came up against that you were stoked to get their jersey?
I wanted to change with Ox at the World Cup, but I think Sia beat him to it. So I would have liked to get one of his. You know, he's such a strong scrummager character. You know, he's just quick as well. I've seen him off a few runaways as well, and you know, would have been a good player. I would have loved to get one of his jerseys, but obviously, like I said, Sia beat me to it at the World Cup, and yeah.
So what is it about Ox Nche that you really admire?
First scrum, I think we we hit in, and I just felt my spine just go clack, 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 clack on my back. And so that was a first, I guess. And so powerful and knowing his history, and he's actually pretty quiet as well. I remember chatting to him after. He was just pretty quiet on the sideline there, but just such a strong player, scrummager, quick as well. Would love to have his jersey again.
He's not doing any of that propping dark art stuff, is he? Putting his hips out?
He's there strong enough that he can just do that. So,
Do you have a toughest opponent?
probably the most vivid one would be Tony Woodcock. 2012 debut, fresh out of my undies in high school, and I was watching Tony Woodcock play a final against France the year before, and here I am propping against him, and it was a bit of a shock, but I think Tony, mate, he must have been taking it easy on me in that game, but mate, such a experienced water player too, and Tony would probably be the toughest one I've had.
Now, Tony Woodcock didn't play overseas. He went back to the farm. But, think about some of the people in France. You've got Joe Rokosoko, who you mentioned, and Jerome Kano, who's also there coaching. You don't have to come back home. Is that maybe something on the cards for you?
Yeah, 100%. I think I've played around the world enough and have played at a decent level long enough to share a bit of experience, with the younger generation. I would love to, step into some sort of scrumming coaching role, or even a mentor role for especially the young boys that come from the islands and New Zealand stuff. They come into crowds or Bordeaux, just to be like the Jericho Foko and the Chris Masoi to myself, to show them the ropes. This is how things are done, sort of ease their way into life here in France, because for a young kid, especially like we have a young kid now in the Espoir team, he'll come straight from Fiji, so he's away from his family, he's young, he's hasn't really got a lot of people around him, so just to be that guy to be the sort of link between the French and himself.
Now, we ask everyone who comes on the show this question. You've been granted some selections in a World Cup squad. Now, it doesn't have to be just Tongan players. It could be players anywhere in the world. You can pick a current player, a former player, and a coach to go along. Who would you take along with you?
Someone that I admired as a young chief coming through was probably Sione Lawaki. Physical, strong, can make something out of nothing, really explosive, sit you down, run around you at the same time. Really one of my favorites when I was growing up, and would love to take him on my squad.
A current player?
Maybe someone like Dupont, obviously world-class player at the moment, probably the best in the world. Nine at the moment. Another guy who can make something out of nothing, just has has an eye for space, and he can put anyone into a hole or kick for someone. Be a game changer and pretty much a rugby cheat, I guess. So, and there's look at the achievements he's done over the rugby and on the world stage. So, someone like Dupont would be awesome.
Has he run around you?
Show him the inside edge, so make sure he doesn't get around you. But yours. They got it for his injury. Hopefully he recovers well, and obviously a handful for us as well. And you obviously want him on your team, but not against you. So it's
And a coach?
And a coach, I would have to say Tom, as you mentioned before. Tom is someone who pretty much, wasn't for him, I would not be sitting where I am now, I guess. He's the one that pretty much picked me out of high school, and sort of gave me the opportunity of the Magpies, and sort of took me with him to the Chiefs, and sort of that guy took me under his wing. There's early stages of the Chiefs, because I know it was a bit of a handful of the Chiefs there, late to meetings, and
these days you're always on time, eh?
oh mate, you should see my time is like 7, 7:01, 7:02, 7:03, 7:03. Mate, you live and you learn, right? You live and you learn. Fines I've had, probably between my own club now, the amount of fines I've had over the years. Jeepers. But it's taken a while, but we got there too. We got there.
It was great to have Big Ben on, an absolute character, and to hear about what it's like in France and those adjustments with playing a French forward pack and, not being able to get the hips out stuff and all those things. It's a different world.
You hear all the stories, but having played with and against Ben Tameifuna, the fact that he said he just got dominated when he first went over there is some feat, and you definitely get the sense there's a lot more let go, and not only in the scrum, but I think breakdowns and mauls. What I did love about it is just you could just see how much he's matured as a person and as an individual, and it was actually quite an inspiring chat from my point of view to just see his reflection and his excitement for where his rugby career is going to go into the future.
Yeah, and he might have a couple more years left in him for that skill set. He played pretty well at that last World Cup, that's for sure. So let's move on to Super Rugby Aupiki now. Now, round 4 brought about something that we hadn't been expecting at all, and that was the Blues women losing. There was a real feeling that maybe they'd just go through the whole thing unbeaten, and with the Power losing at one end and the Blues winning at the other end, it felt a little bit uneven. But on the weekend, Matatū got stuck in. They won 37-29, and now when you look at this competition, Jipper, are the Blues still in that place where you thought maybe this is their tournament?
I think they are purely from a selection point of view. They gave players that had very low minutes opportunity because they had the comfort and belief that they'll still get their home final with 1 week remaining. So with those changes, yes, they would have learnt a lot. And I think both sides had a finals mentality and a winning finals mentality. One, you had, I suppose, the Matatū wanting to put it out of question that they're in the final and then they can focus on that. And then you had the Blues going, okay, well, what if injuries happen next week? And what if someone goes down early and we're throwing them in with a low minute count? So I think the Blues will still be confident in Cam, but I do think Matatū would have grown an arm and a leg. The one area the Blues will have to sort out, because it's not going away, is their accuracy at line-out time. Because a lot of those line-out turnovers just led to players like Maya Joseph getting downfield or spreading it wide, kicking from edge. They played a fantastic game. Maya Joseph was my player of the day, hands down. Like her decision-making around quick taps on full-arm penalties, her decision-making to kick, even when there's space elsewhere, to put it downfield and put that pressure that was mounting. And then, to her credit, when I interviewed her after the game, she was like, well, we knew their line-out was struggling, so our mindset started, because I said, you kicked a lot more than you ran, and I thought, what's going through your mind there? And she, the tactical now, she's like, well, the line-out was, struggling, so we were just thinking, let's get it in there and compound that pressure. Now, all those sorts of lessons, I think it's made it a more tighter race, and it's not as simple as whoever gets the home final wins, and it sets up this weekend massively, and we've just got 2 competitions at the moment that is, getting a lot of attention and excitement.
So basically what it comes down to is this weekend when Matatū play Manawa and Blues play Poa, top spot is up for grabs. And then it goes straight to a top 2 final off the back of that. So anything could happen there. Yeah, well, thank you very much for joining the show. Please send us an email, aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz. Get into the comments section, leave a comment, rack us up. Tell us what we need to talk about next week. We appreciate you watching the show. Thank you to everyone who helps us put it together. Thanks to James Parsons. Thanks to Bryn Hall, as ever, over in Japan. And we look forward to seeing you all again next week. Mā te wā.